When you start the NXT editor, which might be from an icon on the desktop, or if you're using Windows off the Start menu, then you'll end up at this welcome screen. And at this point, you could type the name of a program and press go, and you'd be starting a new program. If you've already been working on our program, then you could go to Open Recent Programs, and you can look over here. Now, this Open Recent Programs area, though, only really applies if you're storing programs on the local hard drive of this machine. In my particular case, I'm just going to type a program name here and click on Go. Now, this is where I'd normally be editing my programs. The thing is, the window over here is in my way. Most of the time you'll close it down though because it gets in the way. If you ever need it back, you just click on this Lego piece and back it comes. So you write an NXT program by dragging icons or blocks over from this palette onto your main editing workspace here. So if I click and drag, let's say, the motor move block over, then I can just drop it wherever I want. I'm just holding down my left-hand mouse button and dragging those blocks out. Now notice how each of these are wired up automatically with this sequence beam that's kind of going behind the blocks. You don't wire anything manually in nxt-g. The blocks here are all connected automatically to this sequence beam. So I can drag out a sound block if I want to be making sounds. I could drag out a display block if I wanted to put things on the display of my robot. You go over here to the weights, you'll notice that there's time weights and touch weights and light weights. There's weights for the sound to get to a particular volume. There's a weight for a object to get within a certain distance of the ultrasonic sensor. You can drag out any of these that you like. There's loop blocks here, which would let you loop around a certain section of your program. And there's switch blocks, which let your program make decisions. If, let's say, a sensor is pressed, then it might take the top path. If it's not pressed, maybe it'll take the bottom path. An awful lot of what you would do in the NXT world, you can do with just these blocks that are on the common palette. But if you need to do something more sophisticated, there is a complete palette, and you get to that by clicking on this middle tab. And that gives you all of the blocks that were on the common palette, plus a whole bunch more. And we'll talk about these in more detail later in the tutorial. If you need to delete a block, you just simply click on it and then hit the delete key, and it deletes it. If you need to insert a block, you can just drag the block around. Now notice as I'm dragging this around, there's a little white highlighted area. That's the indication of where this block is going to go if I happen to release my mouse. So if I release it here, then that's where it's going to go. When I select any of these blocks, there's a control panel that opens up down below here. And this gives you a lot of control and a lot of detail about what that block's doing. In this case, it's a move block, so I'm controlling motor directions and powers and durations and so on. We'll get into all this later. But just know that by looking at the blocks up here on the main workspace, you can't really tell everything that there is to know about the program. You have to click on one of these blocks and then see detail later on down below here. That also applies to printing. If you print out a program, it'll tell you a fair amount about what the program's doing, but it's not going to tell the whole story. So you may have to include some notes along with it to know exactly what's going on. Okay, so now I've got my program. I might want to download it into my robot. I'm going to turn on my NXT here, and it's going to find it. Now all I have to do is just click on this button in the lower left here, and it'll download it into my NXT brick. Compiling means it's taking all of these blocks and turning them into codes that the NXT brick understands. And now it's downloading, and now it's done. So I could just run that program right on my NXT brick. There's a few other buttons down here, most of which you won't use very often. The middle is download and run. Well, that's going to download the program, and then it's going to start running right away. If you've got a mobile robot with wheels and such, and you say download and run, it's going to download it, and then the robot's going to take off around on your desk and probably end up falling on the floor into a heap of Legos. So you want to use that with some care. The other more interesting button, though, is the NXT window. So let's click on that. The NXT window will tell you a lot of information about what's going on inside your NXT brick. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this. Something else that we haven't talked about are the different tools that are available. We've been using the pointer tool up until now. That's what lets you click and drag all these different blocks around. Something else that you might want, though, is the pan tool. If you have a big program that gets bigger than the screen, then one of the only ways of moving around is by clicking on this and dragging it around. I'm just holding down my left mouse button while this screen is being scrolled around. You notice that there's no scroll bars, so that's a pretty handy thing. One of the other important tools is the comment tool. This lets you write comments about your program. This is very, very important, especially in nxt-g. I'll just come along here and click and start. The main reason why you'd want to comment things is these programs can get very long, and they get pretty hard to understand if you save your program for the day and come back a few days later and you're trying to figure out, well, how exactly did I do that? And where in my program do I tell it to raise its arm and put the flag on top of the tower or whatever it is you're trying to do? So it's well to your advantage to include things like that in your program's comments. So like here, if this motor was a thing putting the flag, I'd say something like put the flag. That way, later on, I can come back and say, oh, okay, so I need to change that time or that rotation or something. It makes it a heck of a lot easier to figure out what's going on. A shortcut, if you're using the pointer tool, you can do comments by just coming along and double-clicking. And by double-clicking, then I can say hello or whatever it is. That saves you having to go up here and change over to the comment tool. Another nifty thing to know about is the help. Now, help is a thing that some of us are used to kind of ignoring, but in the NXT world, it can really save your bacon. You just go on down there to the bottom and you say turn on the help, and it brings it up. Now, the help is really, really good, and it tells you more than you'd ever want to know about a particular block. So I'd encourage you, whenever you have a question, the first step ought to be go get the help. Something else to know down here in the lower right is this map tab. If you press on that, it gives you kind of a top-level view of your program. That doesn't really look very impressive right now because my program all fits on the screen, but if it got much bigger, this view down here would be smaller, and I can click and drag a window around to zoom in on a particular area of my program. So it's another handy way of navigating around the program along with the pan tool up here. So in your next lesson, we'll actually start writing a program.